Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, and I'm back from vacation. I wanted to thank you all for indulging me, and I spent a little bit of time away. I didn't do a reading wrap-up last week. To be perfectly frank, it was so glorious in Hawaii that the idea of going back into the hotel room to edit and upload just felt like a wasted time and a wasted vacation. So I decided to forego it and just catch up today. So this will be a little bit of a longer video. I'll try to be succinct, but I, as you can imagine, read a ton of books. So this was a vacation with my mother and my husband. I filmed a video with my mother where we talked about specifically the books we read for Cloak and Dagger Christmas. I'll put a link to that below, as well as near the end if you'd like to see that. So I'll just skim through those, but I read more than just for Cloak and Dagger Christmas, as you will see. So let's get started, and hopefully we can get through this fairly quickly. Okay, so the first thing that I completed, I talked about in that video, and it was The King's Justice. And this is the first of the Stanton and Barling series by E.M.Powell. I enjoyed it. I talked a little bit more in the other video, so I will just leave you to look at that. Just suffice it to say that I will be continuing on with the series. It's set in King Henry II's reign, which is, I think, 1173 was the last one. And I don't read a lot of work set in that time, so I really enjoyed it, and I'd like to continue on with that. The next thing I completed was a read-along that was hosted by Brian at Bookish. I'll link to his channel below, and this was a buddy read that I participated with a number of really fantastic people, and we read Henri de Balzac's Cousin Pons. And it was just such a great reading experience to read it with, number one, someone who is a Balzac fan, because I have not read very much of his work. And then secondly, just really smart people who were interested in going into backstories and trying to envision what was going on and do quick little research. And it really helped to contextualize and add some more color and life to the story. I didn't rate it very high. I enjoyed the reading experience, but I didn't really enjoy the book. Balzac really, I'm starting to understand him a little bit more, which is increasing my appreciation for it. But it wasn't an enjoyable reading experience, just because he was so, he's kind of bleak. He's kind of dark, and I didn't really expect that. And, you know, I think there's a time and place. I just wasn't anticipating that, and being in Hawaii on vacation and then reading this kind of really difficult book about a man who is being cheated out of his soul loved possessions as he's in decline was just a little hard to read. There were no good characters in this book. There was one who was kind of a foil, or meant to be a good character, but he was so over the top that I couldn't really, it felt disingenuous because everyone else was so harsh that it was a little too over the top. But all in all, I am very happy that I read it. Very happy that I read it with these people. And I wanted, again, to extend my thanks to Brian at Bookish for the invitation that he put out to all of us to join. Next up, I read The Anatomist's Wife by Anna Lee Huber, not sure how to pronounce her last name. This is the first of the Lady Darby mysteries. So Mel at Mel's Bookland Adventure, I'll put a link to her channel below, she has raved about this author, and I've seen this one many times. I just have always passed over it. Decided to take a chance this time and enjoyed it. It's a historical mystery set in Scotland. I thought the main character was nicely conflicted. She's a woman who was married off to a man who was an anatomist, or he dissected bodies. And he was a really bad person, and she was really just married to him unwittingly. He wanted her for her art skills because she's an amazing artist, and so he immediately forced her into being there during his dissections and actually drawing them. He has this horrible scandal and dies, and she is left suspect as a willing participant in what women were not supposed to participate in at that point in time. And so she leaves and takes shelter at her sister's Scottish castle with her new husband and children. And she's there kind of in recluse and really trying to distance herself from society. After about a year, it's been about a year and a half, and the family wants to have a holiday, kind of a gathering. And it's at that gathering that a woman is killed. And immediately she is the suspect number one. But she ends up helping to solve the crime because of her skills and understanding of the human body, because of all the time she spent drawing all of these anatomical professional drawings for medical books and science. So it was interesting. I liked it. You know, it's historical mystery. You get what you expect with those. I like the writing. I like the pace. I liked her, and I'll continue with that one as well. I always find these as fantastic palate cleansers between headier material. So nice to have another two now on my list to continue with. Next up, I will talk much more about this, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I did a buddy read of the Topeka School by Ben Lerner with Juan of Bookish Islander, and we're going to talk more in depth about this. There is a lot to talk about. There's a lot that happens here, but I will just say that I absolutely did not enjoy this book. So I'll just tease that out. More to come on this. But we also read this book, The Years by Annie Ernaux. This book was an absolute delight. I tried to read it before in the summertime, but I couldn't get past the first little section because I couldn't understand what was happening, and it just wasn't the right time. We were traveling, we were in abysmal heat, just like so my brain was already frying, and I just wasn't in the right headspace. But I was when I was just laying on the beach and reading. There will be more to talk about this because he and I are going to kind of deconstruct our thoughts on this in future videos. So stay tuned for that. But suffice it to say, this was a 5, and I will read this again. Then I also read The Trembling Hills by Phyllis A. Whitney. Talked about that in the video because that was part of kind of the group read that everyone was doing for Cloak and Dagger Christmas. So finished that. I also finished, I got the luck of the library hold goddesses, and a book that I had been dying to read, which is the new Deborah Levy, The Man Who Saw Everything, came up, and I literally dropped everything else I was reading because it was one of those that my library sometimes does where you only have it for a specific short amount of time. And so I just didn't want to miss any moment of opportunity. So I jumped on it and finished it in a day. I think Deborah Levy does something so interesting and so different. I understand that she is not for everyone, but what she does for me is provide me with a story that has ripples of undercurrents and things that are connected underneath the water, and you kind of look in and see it. And I loved her characters. I loved her settings. I love the ideas that she plays with. I thought this was great. I gave it a 4. I didn't give it a 5. I gave Hot Milk a 5. I just thought Hot Milk was absolutely brilliant. But this I thought was wonderful. It's not a clear story. You have really two timelines that you're playing with, and things that happen in between. I don't want to spoil anything. It's not a very long book, and I think that is to its discredit. I think it could have been longer and we could have had more about the characters. But it's set in England, in the UK, and then it's also set in East Germany. And there's a lot of interesting people who pop up. There's it's an interesting book that I feel like if I say too much, I might spoil it. And so I really don't want to. Just suffice it to say, I still think Deborah Levy is amazing. And I really wish that this had been on the Man Booker shortlist instead of some of the books that we read. Rishti, I'm talking to you. Next up, a book that I read that I loved so much, I gave it to my mother. And because I had her read the first 2 pages, and her eyes lit up, and it was such a good book. And it was called The Salt Path by Rainer Wynn. This is a true story, and it's kind of in the vein of Wild by Cheryl Strayed, where trauma and something horrible happens that makes people want to do something extreme to kind of take their life back into their control. And in this case, what's happened is that a man and a woman in their 50s who have been married many years and have found that due to a complication and a legal case that went against them, they have lost everything. They've lost their home, they've lost their farm, and their business, which was based there. At the exact same time, her husband finds out that he has an incurable disease, and they only have so much time left. And so they make a decision to actually, crazy as it sounds, they do a hike, and they're just going to walk this path, this well-known path, hiking path, and they're going to sleep in the wild because they quite literally have no money, and they have nothing. And so you're on this journey with them, and the writing is so good, and the characters, you just feel for them. And I think this is such an important book. So many people are at risk of it because of the social structures that have slowly been dismantled in many of the countries that deal with significant homeless problems, United States included. I thought this book was so beautiful. I binged it, could not stop reading it, finished it on the airplane and handed it to my mother. So I'm actually sad I don't have a copy, so I might have to rebuy it just to have a copy, because this was absolutely beautiful. Next up, I read Murder at the Vicarage, which is #1 of Miss Marple by Agatha Christie. Talked about that in the video that we just posted yesterday. And then lastly, I read Kate Atkinson. You know I love Kate Atkinson. Festive Spirits. These are 3 short stories. Now, it's so funny because Simon Savage of Savage Reads had just posted that he was reading it. Now, there's only 3 stories. He liked the middle story, whereas I really liked the last story. These are contemporary, modern stories, just about the holidays and Christmas and this time of year. It was just a great little purchase that I made when we were in London for my husband's birthday and our anniversary last month. So really happy to own this and to read it for the holidays. So that's what I read. A lot, right? I know, so many books. And now let me tell you what I'm currently reading. I'm currently finishing up A Christmas Party by Georgette Hare. I said I was going to finish it yesterday in the video, but I had to take my mom to the airport. I hated it. I just adore her. I could spend all my time with her. My husband and my mom, I could spend all my days with. I'm going to finish this today. I talked about it in that one, and I'll talk about it in my week of reading next week, but you know, it's okay. It's okay. I'm also listening to a book that I heard about or read about and thought the premise was really interesting. It's called Parisian Lives, Samuel Beckett, Simone de Beauvoir, and Me by Deirdre Bair. And this is a story about a woman who kind of found herself pitching that she should write the biography of Samuel Beckett, and how that came about, and all of the challenges that created. And so she did write the biography. She also wrote a biography of Simone de Beauvoir. And this is kind of like the backstory of what happened, how she did that. It's the backstory of her coming to terms with imposter syndrome, with what it was like at that time to be a woman who was leaving her husband and child to do this research, which was not really looked at as a good thing back then. All the challenges of these very, very strong and interesting personalities, all the people that she met, and her having to come to terms with how is she going to do this monumental task, and really trying to stretch. I thought it's so good so far. I'm really enjoying it. I'm listening to the audiobook, and you know, I just love getting that peek into people's lives. And I'm thinking about Ireland for our summer vacation. So this is kind of, you know, with Beckett and the talk about Dublin, I'm just like, maybe this is indicating that this is what we need to do. And then lastly, I'm doing a buddy read of The Little Drummer Girl with John Le Carré. The Little Drummer Girl by John Le Carré, and really enjoying that much more than I expected. Having great conversation, and going to continue with that. So looking forward to finishing that soon. And then mood reading. Okay, so here's where I wanted to kind of go a little deep, because I am off until the end of the year. It's crazy. It's crazy that I get this much time off. So I have all of these books that I've been hoarding and wanting to get to, because these are kind of like the best of the year. I bought this one for myself because we said no presents, because we just went to Hawaii and we spent a lot of money. So we were trying to keep everything really low, but I got this for myself. And this is Carmen Maria Machado's In the Dream House. I found her Body and Other Parties so thought-provoking, and so, I just thought her mind is such an interesting place that I wanted to read her story. This is a story of her relationship, her abusive relationship, but told through the guise or the framework of a house, right? So interesting. So I don't think it's very long. I want to jump into this. I saw Bert was reading this, and he said it was a good Christmas or wintry read, and I have it, and I've been meaning to read it, and it's The Evenings by Gerard Rev, so I'd like to get to that. I've been meaning to read this. This is The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. I just think this might be my favorite cover of the year. Coventry. I need to break this open and get into this. I started it. I was traveling for work, got sidetracked by work, wasn't able to finish it. So gonna have to make some progress there. I've had this and I've been wanting to read it for a while. And this is The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey. Deep historical fiction. I think it's like, let's see, what is the year? I think it's like the Middle Ages or something like that. It doesn't say here, but it was up for a bunch of awards. I really need to get to this one. Jacqueline Woodson, Red at the Bone. This is signed first edition that I found, I think when we were doing the BookTube Prize crawl in Raleigh, North Carolina, for when a bunch of us met up for the BookTube Prize winner announcement. Also on that same trip, I got an autographed copy of Jeanette Witterson's Frankenstein. Dying to read this. When I was last in London, again for my husband's birthday and our anniversary, Girl, Women, Other, signed copy from Hatchard. I have to read this. I actually do have to read. I actually do have to read this because my In Real Life book club. We're reading this one next, plus our continuation of Ducks Newburyport, which I didn't even bother to bring over here because it's so heavy. And I also want to finish Underland, The Deep Time Journey by Robert Macfarlane. So as you can see, I have my work cut out for me, but I have a lot of time available, so I'm looking forward to reading these. I'm also looking forward to doing a bunch of videos. I have a bunch of ideas. I want to talk about my reading horizons for 2020. I want to talk about some projects that I'm looking forward to doing. I want to put out a call for buddy reads again. There's some specific ones that I want to read. What else do I want to do? I also want to talk a little bit about the books that I think were the best of the year. And so I'd like to get a few of these in before I do that as well. I already did a kind of a preview on Instagram, but these could change the playing field a little bit. And yeah, so a lot of videos that I'd like to make. So thank you for coming back and putting up with all of this longer video. Thank you so much, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. Bye.